Greetings, listeners. Today we'll dive into a story filled with twist, danger, and an extraordinary display of courage. It's my story, but more than that, it's a story of faith, resilience, and how God works behind the scenes in ways we don't always see. My name is Esther, Hadassah to some. And while I never sought the spotlight, I found myself at the center of events that would change history. I was a channel God used for his protection of his chosen people from the murderous plans of an enemy. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Jackie Adewale, and this is the Bible Basics Podcast, where we break down the Bible into understandable, bite-sized chunks. Today, we have a special guest host to guide us through her unforgettable journey. Take it away, Queen Esther. Thank you, Jackie. It's an honor to share my story. A story connected to a celebration you may know as Purim. While Purim is a joyful holiday today, the events that led to it were filled with danger and uncertainty. This is a tale of survival, faith, and God's care for his people, even when his presence seemed hidden. As the psalmist reminds us in Psalm 121:4, "Behold, he who keeps Israel shall never slumber nor sleep." This was true in my time, and is just as true for you today. Now I'm going to set the stage for you. Imagine the vast Persian Empire 2,500 years ago, a land of incredible wealth and power stretching from India to Egypt. At the center of it all was King Xerxes. My people, the Israelites, were exiles in this foreign land, struggling to hold on to our faith and identity. Little did I know that my Jewish identity, which would be hidden, would define my place in history. Now let me introduce you to the key figures in this story. First, there's Mordecai, my cousin and protector, who raised me after I was orphaned. He was wise, steadfast, and deeply devoted to God. Then there was Haman, a high-ranking official in the king's court, who would come to hate my people because my cousin would not bow to him. His hatred burned so fiercely that he tried to kill all of us. Then there's King Xerxes, the powerful ruler and king of Persia, who sought counsel from those around him on every turn in my story. And then there's me, Esther, a young Jewish woman unexpectedly thrust into the spotlight. My life changed forever when Queen Vashti fell out of favor with the king. In search of a new king, Xerxes, under the advisement of his personal attendants, gave an edict that young virgins from across the empire be brought to his palace. I was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Haggai, the king's eunuch, who had charge of the harem. I followed Haggai's instructions. I pleased him and won his favor and the favor of everyone who saw me. After 12 months of beauty treatments, I was taken before the king. I won his favor and approval. So he set a royal crown on my head and made me queen. But my new role came with challenges. I'd kept my Jewish identity a secret. Mordecai expressly forbade me to reveal my background. Meanwhile, the king promoted Haman to a position higher than all the other officials. The king ordered all the other officials to kneel down and honor Haman. But my cousin Mordecai refused. This enraged Haman and led him to plot not just against Mordecai, but all the Jews in the empire. Haman then manipulated the king into issuing a decree of annihilation against my people. Mordecai then came to me with a challenge to speak to the king on behalf of our people. But there was a catch. Approaching the king without being summoned could mean death. However, Mordecai's words stirred my soul. He said to me, and I'm quoting him, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance from the Jews will arise from another place, and you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" I replied to Mordecai, saying, "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." When I approached the king, my heart pounded. Would he extend his scepter, or would this be my end? By God's grace, the king welcomed me. He promised to give me whatever I asked, up to half his kingdom. Instead of pleading for my people, I invited him and Haman to a banquet. At that first banquet, I held back, and I invited my king and Haman to another banquet the next day. That night, something incredible happened. The king couldn't sleep, so he asked for the royal chronicles to be read to him. In those records, he discovered that Mordecai had once saved him from a plot against his life, and yet had never been rewarded. The next day, the king honored Mordecai, much to Haman's humiliation. At the second banquet, I revealed the full truth. I said to the king, "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king." The king was furious. In a twist of divine justice, the king ordered Haman be hanged on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. But there was still a problem. The decree against my people couldn't be undone. Persian law was irrevocable. Therefore, a new law was issued. The Jews were given permission to fight back, to defend themselves. When the day of the attack came, my people prevailed, turning the intended destruction into a day of victory. Mordecai exhorted the Jews to keep this as an annual celebration called Purim. So why is my story important? Why does it matter? Well, my story isn't just about ancient Persia. It's about faith and courage when God's presence feels hidden. It's about trusting in his unseen hand, knowing that his timing and plans are perfect. Purim reminds us of this. During the holiday, we feast, give gifts, and read my story. The name Purim comes from the word pur, P-U-R, meaning lot, because Haman cast lots to decide the date of our destruction. Yet, what he thought was random chance was God's providence at work. Purim celebrates God's deliverance of his people. Now, did you notice? God's name isn't mentioned in my story, not even once. Yet, his fingerprints are everywhere. Looking back, I can see that all of God's unconditional covenant promises to Abraham and to David were in jeopardy. But his sovereign protection of his people was apparent throughout this story. God's love for Israel is nowhere more apparent than in this dramatic rescue of his people from pending elimination. I know that even when you can't see him, God is there, working behind the scenes in your life too. So, wherever you are today, remember, You are part of a story far greater than you can imagine. God's story. And like me, you might find yourself in the right place at the right time for such a time as this. And as Jackie would say, thank you for listening, and keep reading, keep seeking, and keep growing in your faith. Thank you so much for listening. So that we spread God's word further, please share, like, follow, and subscribe.